factories stand silent. Conveyor belts, once humming, are covered in dust. On February 21, 2026, headlines flash: Apple leaves China. Nike shuts plants. A manufacturing meltdown rocks world markets. Workers gather outside locked gates, uncertainty in their eyes. Whispers of layoffs and jobs moving abroad fill the air. In boardrooms worldwide, executives scramble for answers as investors panic. To understand this shock, we must look back at how China rose and why it's now unraveling. 20 years ago, Made in China was a label found on almost everything. Televisions, toys, computers, shoes, China made them all. By 2010, China was the world's largest manufacturer, producing nearly 30% of all goods worldwide. Its factories ran 24 hours a day, powered by cheap labor and endless ambition. Companies from the United States, Europe, Japan, and beyond rushed to set up their factories in China. They found huge, modern industrial zones, millions of skilled, low-cost workers, and easy ways to export products around the world. In 2019 alone, China exported $2.5 trillion worth of goods, more than any other country. China's manufacturing boom was a miracle. It lifted hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. Small villages grew into cities. The country built high-speed trains, highways, and ports to keep up with the endless flow of goods. The world's supply chains soon depended on Chinese efficiency. But as we'll soon see, this dream was built on a fragile foundation. Rising costs, political risks, and global shocks would test China's hold on the world's factories like never before. Manufacturing was the engine that powered China's incredible growth. In just 30 years, China went from a poor, rural nation to the world's second-largest economy. The magic formula? Factories, exports, and an army of hard-working people. At its peak, manufacturing made up nearly 30% of China's entire economy. Foreign companies poured in money. They built plants, trained workers, and brought new technology. Chinese cities like Guangzhou, Suzhou, and Chongqing became global hubs for everything from electronics to textiles. For every job in a factory, several more sprang up in restaurants, transport, and construction. This manufacturing power also gave China a new kind of global strength. With control over key products, like smartphones, solar panels, and auto parts, China could influence prices and supply for the whole world. Cheap goods from China helped families everywhere save money. But there was a price. As China's factories grew, so did its dependence on exports and foreign investment. When things went well, the country soared. But when the world changed, China's economy became vulnerable. With its manufacturing profits, China started to look outward. It invested in roads, railways, and ports in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Chinese companies built new highways in Kenya, rail lines in Nigeria, and factories in South Africa. All these projects deepened China's influence and brought new trade partners. China also became a leader in the BRICS group: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Through this club, China pushed for more power in world trade, banking, and politics. Its huge market and endless factories made it a partner that many countries wanted to work with. The Belt and Road Initiative was China's big plan to connect Asia, Europe, and Africa with highways and trade routes. It spent trillions of dollars on these projects, hoping to lock in its role as the world's supplier. But this global reach also created enemies. Some nations feared China's growing power and debt. Others worried about jobs lost to Chinese factories. These tensions set the stage for bigger problems down the road. China's manufacturing miracle began to unravel in 2018. The United States, worried about losing jobs and technology, started a trade war. New tariffs made Chinese goods more expensive in America. In 2019, tariffs covered over $360 billion in Chinese exports. China hit back with its own tariffs. Suddenly, costs soared and profits shrank. Then, a second disaster hit. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic swept through China's cities. Factories closed, workers were locked down, global supply chains snapped. Even when Chinese factories reopened, they struggled to get parts and raw materials. Shipping prices doubled or even tripled, adding more pain. These two storms, trade war and pandemic, shook the world's confidence in China. Companies faced delays, shortages, and rising costs. Investors lost billions. For the first time, many business leaders asked, "Is China still the best place to make our products?" The answer, for many, was starting to look like no. The era of automatic trust in China's manufacturing power was coming to an end. As the trade war raged and COVID-19 disrupted everything, companies began rethinking their China strategy. No longer did it seem safe to rely on one country for all their products. Supply chain resilience became the new buzzword in boardrooms from Seoul to Seattle. Big brands started looking for backup. Some decided to build China Plus One strategies, keeping some factories in China, but opening new ones in places like Vietnam, India, or Mexico. Others talked about reshoring, bringing jobs back home to avoid political risks. The numbers tell the story. In 2021, more than 40% of US companies in China said they were considering moving at least part of their production elsewhere. By 2025, Vietnam's exports to the US had doubled, while China's fell by 20%. Companies like Apple, Samsung, and Adidas led the way, moving parts of their supply chains out of China. This shift was not only about politics, it was about survival. Companies had learned the hard way that putting all their eggs in one basket could be a costly mistake. More and more companies are leaving China. Apple now makes iPhones in India and Vietnam. Adidas and Nike moved factories to Indonesia and Cambodia. Why? Rising labor costs and political risks are pushing them out. Meanwhile, countries like Vietnam and Bangladesh offer cheaper labor and tax breaks. As China gets riskier, other countries look more attractive. The world's manufacturing map is being redrawn. Vietnam has become really the biggest winner from China's troubles. Its young workforce, low wages, and friendly trade deals have made it a magnet for foreign investors. In just 5 years, Vietnam's exports have nearly doubled, reaching $370 billion in 2025. Electronics, clothing, and furniture are its biggest growth areas right now. Major brands tell the story. Samsung now makes half its phones in Vietnam. Apple's AirPods and MacBooks are assembled in new Vietnamese factories. Nike and Adidas have opened huge plants, bringing thousands of jobs to cities like Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi. Vietnam's government has moved fast, building new highways and ports to handle this export boom. They've signed trade deals with the European Union and the US, making it easier for companies to ship goods worldwide. Even as China stumbles, Vietnam's star is definitely rising. But this shift isn't easy. Vietnam faces its own challenges, like power shortages, rising wages, and a need for more skilled workers. Still, for now, it stands as the clearest example of just how quickly the world's factory floor can move. China is shifting from low-cost manufacturing to high-tech industries like semiconductors, electric cars, and robotics. It's now the world's biggest maker of electric vehicles and solar panels. But US chip bans and global competition make this risky. China's high-tech dream is bold, but the outcome is uncertain, and the world is watching. China's manufacturing meltdown is shaking the world. For China, this crisis means lost jobs, slower growth, and a search for a new economic model. It's the biggest test for China's leaders in a generation. If they fail, millions could face unemployment and rising anger. If they succeed, China could come back stronger, but as a very different kind of economy. For the world, the end of Made in China brings both risks and opportunities. Prices for many goods are rising. Supply chains are more complex and fragile than ever. New winners like Vietnam and Mexico are stepping up, but they can't replace everything China built overnight. Geopolitics is changing too. The US and China are now rivals, not just trading partners. Countries have to choose sides, hedge their bets, and rethink old alliances. The age of certainty, when China was the world's factory, is over. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. The global economy is entering a new era. The story of China's manufacturing rise and fall will shape our world for years to come.